The winter of 1945 covered Europe in silence. Fields were buried under thick snow. Forests stood frozen and still. But beneath that quiet white landscape, the world was at war. The World War II was approaching its final chapter, yet the fighting was still fierce and unforgiving. Millions of soldiers were scattered across continents, fighting battles that would shape the future of the world. Every village, every road, every frozen field could suddenly become a battlefield. In the eastern region of Alsace, American forces were holding the line against desperate German counterattacks. And it was here, in a small village called Holtzwihr, that one of the most unbelievable stories of the war would unfold. Among the American troops was a young soldier named Audie Murphy. He was only 19 years old. At first glance, he didn't look like a war hero. He was small, thin, and quiet. In fact, when Murphy first tried to enlist in the military, many officers doubted him. They thought he was too small for combat, too fragile. But what they couldn't see was something far more powerful. A quiet determination, a courage that had been forged long before he ever stepped onto a battlefield. Murphy grew up in extreme poverty in rural Texas. From a young age, life forced him to become strong. He hunted to feed his family. He worked hard every day just to survive. Long before the war began, life had already trained him for hardship. And when the United States entered the war, Murphy knew he wanted to fight, not only for his country, but to prove something, that even someone small, we could do something extraordinary. January 26, 1945. The cold in France was brutal. Snow reached up to the soldiers' knees, and the freezing wind cut through their uniforms. Murphy's unit, part of the United States Army, was positioned near the village of Holtzwihr. Their mission was simple on paper: hold the line. But war is never simple. That morning, something changed. At first, it was just a distant sound, a faint rumble in the distance. Then it grew louder, engines' metal tracks grinding against frozen ground, voices. The soldiers quickly realized what was happening. The forces of Nazi Germany were launching a massive counterattack. Hundreds of German soldiers advanced through the snow. Behind them came armored vehicles and tanks. The ground itself seemed to tremble. The battle had begun. Within seconds, the quiet winter morning exploded into violence. Machine guns roared. Rifles cracked across the frozen fields. Artillery thundered in the distance. American soldiers fought back as best as they could. But the German assault was relentless. Wave after wave of soldiers continued to push forward. Murphy watched the battlefield carefully. He saw something others were afraid to admit. Their defensive line was collapsing. If they stayed there, they would all die. Murphy made a critical decision. He ordered his men to retreat into the nearby forest. There they could regroup and survive. One by one, the soldiers began pulling back, running through the snow toward safety, but Murphy didn't move. He stayed behind, alone. In front of him, hundreds of German soldiers continued to advance. It was an impossible scene. One man, standing against an army. During the battle, an American tank destroyer had been hit. It was an M10 vehicle. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Murphy kept fighting. The vehicle beneath him was still burning. Smoke filled the air around him. The heat from the flames scorched his face. Metal fragments whistled past his body. At one point, Murphy was hit in the leg by shrapnel. He was wounded, but he didn't stop. He kept firing. He kept calling artillery strikes. He kept fighting. Flames poured from its engine compartment. Thick black smoke rose into the gray winter sky. Any reasonable soldier would have stayed far away from it. The ammunition inside could explode at any moment. But Murphy noticed something. The heavy .50 caliber machine gun mounted on top of the vehicle was still intact, still functional. Murphy looked at the advancing enemy, then he looked at the burning vehicle, and he made a decision that defied all logic. He ran toward the flames, climbed onto the burning tank destroyer, and took control of the machine gun. Murphy opened fire. The .50 caliber machine gun thundered across the battlefield. Powerful bursts ripped through the cold air. German soldiers began to fall. But Murphy wasn't just firing the weapon. He was also holding a field radio. While firing the machine gun, he called in American artillery strikes. Shells began exploding around the advancing German troops. The enemy soldiers became confused. From their perspective, it looked like they were facing a heavily defended American position. But the truth was almost unbelievable. There was no defensive line, no army, just one soldier. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Murphy kept fighting. The vehicle beneath him was still burning. Smoke filled the air around him. The heat from the flames scorched his face. Metal fragments whistled past his body. At one point, Murphy was hit in the leg by shrapnel. He was wounded, but he didn't stop. He kept firing. He kept calling artillery strikes. He kept fighting. For nearly 1 full hour, Murphy held his position. An hour in battle can feel like a lifetime. Every second stretches endlessly. Every burst of gunfire is a fight for survival. But slowly, something began to change. The German advance started to slow. Their soldiers hesitated. The unexpected resistance confused them. They believed they were facing a much larger force. That hesitation changed everything. Eventually, Murphy's ammunition ran out. The battlefield fell silent for a moment. Murphy climbed down from the burning vehicle. He was wounded, exhausted, but still standing. And then he did something incredible. He returned to his men. Murphy gathered his soldiers again. Now the German forces were disorganized, confused by the resistance they had encountered. This was the moment to strike. Murphy led his men forward. The American soldiers counterattacked. Within a short time, the German assault collapsed, and the village of Holtzwihr was reclaimed. For his extraordinary bravery, Audie Murphy received the highest military decoration in the United States, the Medal of Honor. He became one of the most decorated American soldiers of World War II. But his story is remembered for more than medals. It is remembered for a single moment, a moment when one man chose not to retreat. War is filled with armies, strategies, and battles, but sometimes history is changed by a single decision. On a frozen battlefield in France, a 19-year-old soldier showed the world something powerful. Courage is not about size. It is not about strength. Courage is about one thing: the decision to stand your ground when everyone else is forced to step back.